takes a step forward.
So, moving forward,
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
and that meaning we have a very special guest coming. Hate it or not, we have a very special guest that we've asked to come to the show. Otis knows. I don't know if you know him very well, but he's either from. I don't know if he's from Chicago or not. I was going to say he's from the city, but he does something very, very dope and very close to our hearts in Chicago. And ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Craig Bass. I hope I pronounced it right.
You did pronounce it right. Good job.
Perfect. Hey man, how you doing?
Thank you, guys. Good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. I'm excited to have you on. I know our first initial meeting was relatively soon, but to make the quick turnaround for you to come on the show, I really appreciate, man. So how are you doing?
It's an honor to be on. Thank you, guys. Doing great. Thank you for calling me a very special guest too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, all our guests are very special, man. Anybody
now I don't feel very special anymore.
Well, I say that because anybody that's willing to give us our time to come on our little platform, I'm very thankful for, because it means a lot to me individually. Like whether anybody sees it or not, I appreciate you.
Well, thank you guys for having me on.
Of course. That being said, for Mr. Bass, for anybody that doesn't know who you are, what you do, would you please let everybody know?
Yeah, so I'm a filmmaker from the Chicagoland area, not in the city. Not very far from the city, though. We're in Brookfield, and in Brookfield is an arcade called Galloping Ghost, which is the biggest arcade in the world. I'm gonna get it wrong, but I think what's that? One of the coolest places ever? Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're up to something like 920 something games at this point. Every Monday they put a new game on the floor. It's a block long, the venue. And yeah, it's a very cool place. But even more interesting than this is that the owner's been working on his own game for 28 years at this point. And when I found that out, as a storyteller, I had to figure out just that. What was the story behind this, and what happened to the game? You know, when I found out, it was a few years ago, and I didn't even know, had the game been done? Was it still being worked on? I figured it had been done and just kind of languished in obscurity. But then when I met the gentleman, Doc Mack, who owns the arcade, he filled me in on the fact that the game was still being worked on. So I've never met anybody that spent so much time on any one thing and put so much into it. And I think that alone made me interested in telling his story.
Okay, so let's take it back to the beginning. Let's go way back to the wee mini Craig. Obviously, to get into stuff like games and filmmaking, you had to have some sort of inspiration growing up in your childhood. Tell us about just your upbringing and like how you got into this, I guess, the nerd space, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so I'm 41. So the big things for me when I was a little kid, the big, inspirational things would have to be definitely NES, because I was very young when that came out, and just Zelda, Mario, the original wave of those games, I was obsessed. And beyond that, Kung Fu movies, particularly 80s and 90s Hong Kong Kung Fu movies, Jackie Chan and his, the guys that came up with him, Sammo Hung, Yun Biao, was a huge inspiration. I was always a massive fan of martial and Bruce Lee, of course. Bruce Lee's films aren't very good. They're not even very entertaining, most of them. But Bruce Lee is extremely charismatic, and he's an extremely interesting person. So, while the films aren't great, him as an individual has always fascinated me. And then even arcades to an extent. My uncle would take me to arcades when I was little, and this was, I think, even then they were kind of losing steam by the time I was old enough to go. And that was a fascinating place to be. But, beyond that, comics for sure, right? And I remember loving Image Comics when they first came out, with that first run of like Gen 13 and Savage Dragon and all these cool new properties. We hadn't really seen a bunch of new properties like that. Bigger than that, actually, something I've neglected, anime. So I fell into anime super young. You had Blockbuster Video had like 3 anime, and I would rent them and watch them, rent them and watch them, rent them and watch them. And I started to find out that, at some comic stores in the back of the store on the bottom shelf were bootleg versions of shows that had been subbed by fans in their basements. So started to buy up these obscenely expensive fan sub tapes, then started to trade tapes with people all over the world through the mail. Very different world. The internet's a godsend. So anime was massively, like, especially the 90s, 80s and 90s anime, super, super influential. I don't know if I'm missing that. Those are the big things for me, the big nerd things.
No, you're definitely on line with us a lot. So I mean, to make the step from being a consumer of all these things to being a creator of, like, stuff within itself is a huge jump. Can you tell us a little bit about what made you actually want to start, making things yourself as opposed to just watching it like everyone else does?
Yeah. I mean, I think my best friend Steven always says nobody tells a child to draw. Every kid just draws. And I think that's true for all of us. You just do it instinctually. It feels right to create. So I actually think making that movement into doing things, actively being involved in creative pursuits, it's really kind of the natural state of all of us. I mean, I would assume all of you, including me, were making movies in your head as a little kid. We're drawing things out. And that was just always the way to be. And when I was 10, I started making kung fu movies with my best friends. Their dad would film it on the old VHS camera. We'd score it by having a TV in the background with usually Street Fighter on, and I'd just let the Street Fighter music play as we pretended to fight, and then we were just live scoring these ridiculous films. But we would draw our own comics. We would draw our ideas for video games. And you just create naturally as a child. The question is, why is it that when we start to get older, creation turns into something that we see as work? It's too much work. It's too, why do we step away from it? So I've just kind of always been in the headspace that if there's something I love, I want to do that thing. So, and I'd rather make a movie than watch a movie. Being creative is I love watching movies. I'm a cinemaphile. I love watching film, but the act of doing is so much more fulfilling than the act of consuming. So I think that I don't know. I think it's totally natural to do these creative things. It's what is the force, and I haven't completely deciphered this. What is the force that works against us and convinces us as we get older not to do these things, to just consume, not to create any longer?
So to play off that point, obviously, as all three of us here know, when you're creative, you hit that wall every now and then, or you're burnt out, or it's stressing you out. Do you feel like you hit that wall, and how do you stay motivated to just create consistently, or do you take breaks in here and there?
No, I mean, I think everybody hits that wall, but what do they? Somebody had a great quote, and I can't even paraphrase it now, but it was basically like, inspiration is inconsequential. You just keep going at it. You get up and you do the work. So that might be the thing. When you're a kid, you draw because you seemingly instinctually have this, you're compelled to create, and you draw when you want to draw. I guess that's a big difference when you get older. And maybe that's why people start to perceive these things differently. Once you start to make a life out of these things, or you start to make a habit out of them, you have to do it whether you want to do it or not some days. So I don't think there's any secret. I think that's just it. You have to do it whether you want to do it or not. And some days it's immensely fulfilling and fun. And some days it's exceptionally painful and it's a massive struggle, and it's like pulling teeth. I don't worry as much. I don't get the blocks as much as I used to, but that's also a function of, if you're doing the work continuously, you're not just waiting for inspiration. I don't know. I think things just come easier on average. It's like it's like lifting weights. It's your creative muscles. Once you build them up, they can support you most of the time. You're still gonna have some bad days where you can't lift as heavy, but in general, you become stronger and everything's a little bit easier. So I wish I had a better like cheat code for, what do you do when you get blocked up? But I think it's working at it. When the pandemic came, I started writing a novel, which I never finished, unfortunately. So it's half written. But I had a goal for myself, and it was 2,000 words a day. So that might take, I mean, I don't really remember, but let's say you're flying, maybe that takes 2 hours or something, right? An hour. And then some days it would take like 5 hours, but I held myself accountable to 2,000 words a day, you know, and that was my method at that time to push me forward. And yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a cheat code, but I think a lot of it is just keeping at it and accepting the fact it's going to be hard sometimes. That's, I think, one reason we turn away from these things, because the moment they're not just pure fun anymore. Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But I'm not really looking for fun. I'm looking to be fulfilled. And on that path, I'll have fun. There will be days when we have a lot of fun. But being fulfilled has always been infinitely more important to me than having fun. Because fun will come and fun will go. It'll be there. So I think the most important part is to apply yourself diligently to the craft and accept that some days it's going to suck.
I apologize for coming in late, Craig. I am I'm the third host. Ironically enough, you're talking about how hard it is to follow, pursue, and be involved with the craft. And I'm half an hour late or more. So shame on me for that. LA traffic hates me a lot in the face. But so from what I understand, though, you actually own the world's greatest and the most amazing arcade with over 10 billion arcade machines in it. You've made 17 million films to this week. You've written 17 books. Yeah. So it's all these wonderful things. It's great. Thank you so much for being on the show. But I'm just curious, real quick, just for my own personal gratification, what are you most proud of that you've done as an artist, creator, owner?
Well, and I don't own this, so I'm making a film about the guy that owns the arcade. So I'm just a filmmaker.
That's perfectly fine.
We'll get to that more in a little bit, but
yeah. What am I most proud of? Probably what I'm working on right now, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but most of my life had a hard time with finishing things. So I had a million ideas, and I'd work on something, and then when it got hard or when things didn't go my way or whatever, it's like, let's move on to this. Now, when I got older, when I started my own business doing video production, I had to finish things because people were paying me to finish things. But then I also started to learn how to finish creative work as well. And I'm just telling you how I didn't never finish my book that I started writing, but maybe one day. But I think that I've been working on this film for almost 2 years. I've spent $60,000 of my own money, which could sound like a lot or a little, but it's all I had to put in, and I don't have anymore. And I think that I've put thousands and thousands and thousands of hours into this. And a lot of those hours, nobody cared at the time, right? I'm sitting here in my office for 5-6 hours straight, translating notes that I took while I was working through the story of this and looking for inspiration and structuring things. And so I think that sticking with this project for so long is actually a huge victory for me. I've proven to myself that I've grown and I'm more mature and that I can really go the distance on things. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but I think that what I'm doing now brings me the most pride because it's perhaps forced me to grow more than any other project.
You could say you could. I'm not saying that you should say, but I'm saying you could say that you're most proud of your own growth, that you matured into a more consistent artist, which is great.
Yeah, frankly, I hate all my work. I don't know if you guys are artists, you probably feel the same way or you don't, but everything I do, I hate. When you look back at it, you can never materialize the thing that's in your mind. So I just keep moving forward. That's I don't spend a lot of time looking back. I'm not saying looking back is a bad thing by any means, but for me, there's plenty of new ideas. So if we finish this, we do the best we can, we put it out there. If I look back on it too long, I just see the difference between where I'm at now and where that, and where that.
That's like my biggest struggle. I'll do video essays on the channel every now and then, and if I ever show one to somebody, I have to turn it on and then run away because I want them to see it, but I don't want to see it because I don't want to be reminded of stuff that I messed up on.
Right.
Similar. I have similar tendencies. Yes.
I'm not sure if Otis and Charlie talked to you about this before, but did you guys cover imposter syndrome as well? Where you?
Nope.
Okay. We have not.
I wasn't sure if that's something you may deal with yourself, Craig, where you, just what you just said just there, kind of reminded me of imposter syndrome, when you feel like you are incapable of doing whatever you did before, or that you're not good enough to do it again, or that you will be found out as being, you know, a fake. Like people are like, oh my gosh, Craig is the most amazing filmmaker of all time. You're like, I'm not. I am the saddest person in the world. And you bury your head in the sand for a while. Has that ever happened before too?
I don't know about the imposter part in the sense of, I don't know that anybody's thought I was the greatest filmmaker of all time. So I don't know that I uphold any vision that people have of me. But I think for me, what I struggle with is when I see something that speaks to me, I feel a compulsion to be of that caliber. And, you know, I might be watching a film that somebody made and they'd been making films for 25 years or something, and then they made this film. But I still feel, and this probably, I mean, this doesn't do me any good to feel this way, but I'll feel like, hey, I want to make something that, you know, stands against it. Again, I brought up my best friend Steve earlier, and he has illustrated a comic, an indie comic, and he was telling me at one time when they were making it, he said, I don't want to just make something that's good enough. I want to make something that can sit on the shelf next to my favorite books. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, for him, his favorite books were mainly Marvel. So that there was a tall order to match that level of professionalism, right? So I don't know that I ever feel like the imposter thing very much. I'm lucky to not suffer from that too much. I think I feel the frustration at my own limitations constantly, right? That I want to be X and I'm just not there yet. Either I haven't been doing it long enough or I'm just different, you know, whatever the case may be. I don't think it's helpful. You know what I mean? I think it's, this isn't something that I'm particularly proud of, and I don't think it helps anybody. But if anything, maybe hearing, I think sometimes talking about these things and you guys bringing these things up is great, because other people certainly feel similarly, and this way they feel like, oh, it's not just me. You know, there's not something wrong with me. It's not just me. Like all these other people have these same feelings. So I think that's very important.
Now, a question that I have for you, Craig, because I know before when we talked, you were telling me about how so many of the projects that you had made early on in your career that you hated, like you didn't enjoy being on those at all. Can you tell us a little bit about those and how they helped to prepare you to create the document that you're working on right now? Yeah,
I mean, here's maybe the most important thing to mention is, so when I was 9, so I dropped out of high school. I had a terrible high school experience. I had a broken family. My adolescence was a mess. So I dropped out of high school and I want to be a filmmaker. I certainly don't have money or the means to go to film school, but I still have this feeling that I want to be a filmmaker. So at one point I was able to get a fairly inexpensive digital video camera. This is forever ago, so old DV camera. And I was ignorant, so I thought all I need to do is to make a movie. Hey, I'll shoot a documentary, because you don't need a cast, you don't need a cinematographer, you don't need a sound guy. You just need a camera and a mic, and you film life. And it's that simple. And I decided I was going to make a movie about, at the time I'd gotten my GED and I had gotten into community college, and I had this philosophy professor that was just a very interesting fella. He was a German expatriate. He had lived on he just had a wild story. He had been a theater actor. He had lived on American military bases in Morocco selling goods to soldiers that he would, I don't know, find in the desert, or and then he had these just interesting ideas on philosophy. So I thought, hey, that's an idea for a documentary. You know what I mean? And I'll just follow him around and I'll film it. And then the documentary will come. Well, that's certainly not how it works. So that kind of fell apart because I had a very ill-conceived idea of how that was going to go. And that was hard. You know, it was hard to sort of fail, right? That's what we talk about. I mean, that was a total failure. And I even went to Italy for this. He was doing this meaning of life thing in Italy. And it was my first time out of the country. I got on a plane alone and flew out there and was there a week with my camera. And, you know, a lot went into it. But then my next pursuit, I took some time away, and I'm just working at a restaurant at this point, trying to cut my teeth, hone my craft. and I have another idea for a film. And this is when cosplay wasn't, I was probably 24 or so at this point, so 41 now. So cosplay was around, but it was mainly present in the anime community, and it was big in the anime community, but it hadn't even really broken much into like the Comic-Con community, certainly not the public eye. So I thought, man, I'm going to make a documentary on cosplay. I'm fascinated by it. One, I have this history of loving anime, so seeing people bring these characters to life is really cool. Two, I've always had a fascination with human behavior, and in fact, when I was sort of at my lowest point, thinking I'll never be a filmmaker, there's just no hope, my intent was to potentially go into anthropology and study human culture and human behavior, which, if you think about it, documentary is really just a cinematic extension of anthropology, analyzing, cultures and subgroups and stuff. But anyway, I thought this is a really cool phenomenon, and it probably has some roots in what it means to be human, because you look at a lot of indigenous peoples putting on masks, becoming the spirit, or becoming different. There seems to be our outfits seem to have a deeper significance. Our appearance, sometimes the appearance that we choose to take on, seems to have a deeper significance. So I thought, this is great. I called it the art of actualization, and kind of a pretentious title, but I'll get in there and we'll do this film. And I shot for at least 3 years. I was a waiter at night. I would put all my money that I would, I'd pay my rent and stuff, and then I'd put everything else into the film. And I got 2 other guys involved that I ended up meeting, who both had film degrees. And we shot forever. And we made relationships with so many people, went to so many cons, spent so much time, ended up with 280 hours of footage. Jeez. And then
oh my God.
It was, but here was the problem. One of my co-directors said, look, man, we need a conflict. We don't have a conflict. We're just following people around, talking to them, learning about their lives. I said, dude, documentary is all about purity. Stop trying to force your ideas, your conflict. It's just, well, here's the thing. He was right. Stories are only conflict. If you don't have a conflict, if you don't have struggle, you don't have a story. I was wrong. We've got 280 hours of footage, and I'm starting to come to the realization that I've been too stubborn and I'm wrong. And now how do we find a story? And then my co-director, who I was mentioning, has a psychotic breakdown, and he loses his mind. He starts thinking that people on the L train are letters in the alphabet of God, and he loses his mind. He's a great guy, but he has deep psychiatric issues. And there was another fellow that was acting as a producer. He steals all the footage and absconds to Las Vegas and says he's going to sell it to Comedy Central for God knows why. Comedy Central didn't want it anyway, and he was nuts. The whole thing implodes. And this 3 years of my life, all my time, all my money, these relationships I had built, everything is just up in flames.
Jesus.
And I was like, I never want to do a documentary again, And those failures definitely shaped who I am now, the work that I do now, the way that I perceive art now, all of these things. I feel like that didn't exactly answer your question, but the point I'm trying to make is who was I? I was talking to somebody about failure yesterday, and it's like, the people that succeed are the people that are willing to fail. Because I could have given up, and I thought about it. So I thought, I'm just not good enough. I'm an idiot. First of all, I'm an idiot, because these fundamental aspects of storytelling, I let go to the wayside. That's what I'm thinking, right? And then it's just, right, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not clever enough. I'm not, whatever it is. And I really, really was ready to just be done. I'm not good enough. It's time to be done. But I wasn't done. I took a break a little bit, but I wasn't done. And had I allowed that failure to hold me back, obviously I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So it definitely has shaped me. So I don't know. The moral of the story is be prepared to fail hard. But this is cliche. The true failure is not getting back up. You know what I mean? But failure is an integral part of developing as an artist and a person, right? So that was a lot of probably what shaped where I eventually got. And then the rest, a lot of it is craft, right? You get way better. You know, everybody has a craft. And you really should always engage in continuous education, right? So you're honing your craft, you're getting better, you're getting a deeper understanding, you're learning new skills. That's important. If you don't do that, then shame on you. And then you continue to work through time. And when you look back at your work a decade ago, you're like, holy, oh my God, like I had no idea how to light things properly, or why did I do that? Or why did I think that was okay? And like you had said, you know, not everybody else feels that way. Most people are going to be way less critical than you, but it definitely, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm just rambling. Yeah,
You're fine.
I love it. I love the irony of you talk about failures and you fail to address the question, but it's still it's all nebulous. So it's awesome. It works.
Thank you, man.
To redirect things, Craig, could you give us some information and advice? Because you got into a lot of the inspiration for your past projects, but for your current project, Ghostlord and the Quest for the Dark Presence, could you give us like a background on maybe your inspiration for that, or what the process has been to get that worked on?
Yeah, I mean, just to be conscious of time, because I know I've been rambling. It's really, I heard the story from somebody. So there's a video game called Dark Presence. It's been being worked on for 28 years. It is in the style of the original Mortal Kombat, where it's real people filmed on green screens. The green screens are removed and you play as those real people. Okay. This game has been refilmed 3 times. There have been wealthy Texan investors. David Lynch's production company offered money for the story. There's been 13 iguanas acquired in the process. There's been potential curses involved. There's been mystery illnesses. There's been the creation of the world's largest arcade. Galloping Ghost did now over 920 something games. All of these were stories spun out of this quest that this man, Doc Mack, has been on for 28 years to finish this game he envisioned as a 17-year-old. When I first heard this, that it was just that. Like, there's no inspiration. It's, wow, that's a great story. And I don't start with themes. For me, I don't really believe in that. A lot of people preach themes, start with themes. So if our theme is love conquers all, that's where we start, and then we build up from there. No, is it an interesting story? If it is, then it grabbed me for some reason, and there's something that, and then when we start to dissect it, not to get too gross, but pick it apart and dig into it, themes will start to pop out. So it was really just, I heard this from somebody that was in the game when she was 17, now 30 something, you know, and at the time pregnant and a teacher. And when she told me that she had been in an abandoned warehouse on a green screen in this kind of scandalous outfit with a very spiky weapon being filmed by Doc Mack, owner of the largest arcade in the world, when he was much younger, I was like, oh, okay, wait, what? What happened? And that's kind of what inspired it.
So could you give us like, one, where will people be able to find this? And do you have like an estimated time of when you think it'll be done?
Right now, so I mentioned earlier, I basically spent all my money on it. So we are fundraising. And so it's on Kickstarter right now. We're fundraising. So if you go to ghostlordkickstarter.com/start, which I'm sure you guys can put this in the notes. So.
Yeah. I'm going to have the link for this in the description of the video. We put it out.
Awesome. So go to the Kickstarter. There's a trailer at the top. We have about 130 hours of footage right now. We've done about 45, 50 interviews and a lot of filming over the last 2 years. You can see the trailer. That's going to explain the story, the feeling, the idea, everything much better than I can explain it here. So I encourage everybody to go there, check out the trailer. If you're there and you check out the trailer and you're like, I want to get involved, I want to give, awesome. We've got something like 9 days left, and out of $60,000, we have 45. So we're doing good, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. When it's going to be released, I don't know. You know, I think it's the next step is getting the funds. That's what we're working on now to finish it off. When we have those, we'll be, you know, we're still working. I mean, we shot an interview yesterday and we're shooting one tomorrow. So I'm still putting resources into it and moving it along, but it has to be what it has to be. You know, I have a vision in my head for it, what it is, and it can't be any less than that. And then it's just about, I mean, anybody can relate to this. It's just about resources at that point. Can we get the money together to keep working on it? I would love to say that it would be out within a year. That I don't really want it to take longer than that. I always say I don't want this to be my dark presence. You know, I don't want this to take me so long, because there's other thing. I'm already writing a script for an indie film, you know, and then there's other documentary ideas I'm talking to people about and starting to do some preliminary investigation into. So while I love the story and it's been a great experience, every story needs to end at some point, and then you move on to the next one.
All right.
So hopefully soon. Yeah, relatively soon.
I know myself, I'm very interested to see this. I'd love for this to come to full fruition. So again, if everybody wants to support that, we'll have the link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video. So again, go show some love, go support, so we can get this done. And if it is finished in time and you have it out on platforms, we'd love to cover it and probably have you back on so we can discuss just the making of it or the story itself, if you'd love to come back for that.
Yeah, always. I've put so much into this. I don't mind talking about it. It's what I've spent most of my time doing for the last 2 years.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you giving us your time, your blood, sweat, and your energy for this really dope conversation. So guys, getting to church announcements, we have some things coming up that we're going to be working on soon. I have a video on the Renaissance, or at least my personal Renaissance of horror, coming out soon. DBZ documentary and its effect on Black nerds is still being worked on. And we have some other tasty treats and morsels that may be coming your way. You never know. But again, thank you guys for your support. We hope for your continued support, and we'll see you guys next time on another episode of the Then and Now podcast. Peace.
Beach.